today there is a, let's say there is a huge gap between implementing a decentralized application versus implementing a centralized mainstream application, right? So if you go to, want to develop for something to deploy on AWS, on desktop, or on iPhone, you have a lot of resources.
Yeah, there's huge tool sets.
Huge tool sets, right?
For existing
exactly.
programming languages, for existing operating systems. And if you look at some other smart contract platforms, the only one that has some tools in comparison is Ethereum, right? Where you've got the Truffle suite, where you've got things like that, Ganache.
There you go, exactly. So when developers try to go to the blockchain world to develop the apps, they face many problems, right? Scalability is a huge one. And the other one that we find like a major obstacle as well is exactly this, the lack of tools, of stacks, and the environment that people are used to outside of the blockchain world. And that's exactly what Cartesi is tackling here. So we are a layer 2 solution that bridges this gap because we provide a operating system, a Linux OS that you can run your D app inside with the same consensus and security guarantees of the blockchain. Basically, wow. That's it.
Dude, that's huge. So let me get this straight. I can write a D app without Solidity. I can write it using Linux.
Yeah, the long-term objective is that at some point, developers don't even have to touch, in some cases, smart contracts directly. They can implement everything on Linux and deploy on the Cartesi nodes. Right now, there is still some work that developers need to do on smart contracts. But yeah, we are headed at that direction.
Okay,
we want to be this abstraction layer. Yeah, we want to be this abstraction layer that developers are going to be away from the idiosyncrasies and complexities of particular blockchains they will develop for Linux.
So again, just so I understand, do I have to touch Solidity to interact with Cartesi today?
Right now, yes. Right now, yes.
Okay, because it's a layer 2 solution on Ethereum?
Correct.
Okay.
So it's a layer 2 solution that starts to implement for Ethereum. It's on Ethereum right now. And of course, you want to port to other major blockchains. And because we implemented our smart contracts in Solidity, porting to other blockchains that support Solidity should be a very easy task. But later on, you also want to port to other blockchains as well.
Okay, now I'm going to keep on asking a lot of these, like,
sure, please,
what seem to be basic questions, even though they're not basic at all. In my tool set of ways to compile and to deploy a smart contract, I've got the EVM, I've got the Sputnik VM, now LLVM. Is Cartesi in that chain of options?
Yeah, so in a certain way, yes, because our VM has the same basic property that you'll find on the EVM, on the WASM for blockchains, and so on and so forth. We have a VM that's reproducible, that's deterministic. So whatever you run inside of the Cartesi machine, which is our VM, can be reproduced on a bit-by-bit way. So no matter where you're running our VM, no matter which platform, which operating system or architecture, we guarantee determinism of whatever is in there. So you as a developer don't have to worry to make your Linux application deterministic or reproducible. You don't have to worry about floating points and all this kind of stuff because we're resolving that issue from the basis.
And that's big. So when you say you're resolving that issue on the basis, does that mean that you're doing it on the node side? What does that mean?
Yeah. So let me step back a little bit. We implement the RISC-V ISA on an emulator, right? So we emulate a RISC-V architecture. And because of this choice, you're able to run a complete operating system, a full-fledged operating system inside the RISC-V. It's not a toy architecture, right? And you can boot Linux inside of there. And once you can boot Linux, everything that you can do inside is going to be reproducible because our emulator was written to be reproducible to start with.
Now, how does this compare to a solution like RSK is for Bitcoin?
What do you mean?
So Rootstock is a layer 2 solution for writing smart contracts on Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. How would Cartesi compare to something like that?
So let me give you some basic ideas so you can understand, right? So let me step back because maybe you're lacking some context here.
For sure.
So yeah. So we are a layer 2 solution. It's similar in certain ways to Plasma, state channels, TrueBit. TrueBit is also very, very similar to what we are doing. So basically, we move computation off-chain, right? And the parties involved in the app, they can achieve local consensus. They can agree on the results or evolution of those computations happening off-chain, right? And then they can propose to the blockchain results from that agreement that happened off-chain involving complex computations, large amounts of data, everything that couldn't run inside, these people run outside and they agree on the results. Then someone goes to the blockchain and says, look, this is the result of the computation. Here's the hash of the final state.
I understand. You're using layer 1 as a storage mechanism.
Exactly. And then for you to assert or to challenge something that happened, you have to stake a collateral. So it's a crypto economic protocol that if people misbehave, if they're trying to cheat, their collateral is going to be confiscated and given to the honest party.
So this part is interesting that you just mentioned the collateral. So is there a token involved? Because you mentioned...
Yeah. There will be a token involved. For Cartesi Core first version right now, it's open source. It's out there. You don't need any token. You can do whatever you want, you know. But we are going to introduce a token for convenience and security reasons. We can explore that later.
Okay. Actually, I think, you know, if you don't mind, I'd like to explore that now, just because
sure.
I'm not aware of another, compiling and consensus like Dapp building solution that requires a token. Is like the TrueBit example. Do they also have a token?
Yeah. They are also going to use tokens.
Now, is that because you need to incentivize nodes?
So here's the thing. So for the Cartesi Core, which is a technology that's out there, it's open source now.
It's open. When was it? Because recently, that must have been recent.
Yeah, it was a couple weeks ago that we released.
Congratulations. That's a big...
Thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah, it was a major release. We're very happy. And willing for people to start and to try and give feedback as well. So we have a release candidate out there. There is a demo that wraps everything together and people can just test and see things working. But Cartesi Core, which is basically the implementation of our technical paper that you must have seen, doesn't involve the concept of the Cartesi network yet, which is going to involve the token. So basically, if you have two parties, Alice and Bob, that are doing some computation off-chain, they can propose some result back to the blockchain. And if someone's trying to cheat, the blockchain has a way to find who is dishonest and punish whoever is dishonest in a very cheap and performant way.
So to re-summarize that, if there's somebody cheating on the outcome of a computation, the blockchain allows us to detect that and then then trace back to the person who was manipulating the result.
So how does that work? It works in a very similar way to TrueBit. We also use a verification game algorithm, which is basically an interactive algorithm that involves the blockchain in a way that the blockchain doesn't need to run again to re-execute the entire computation, because that would be impossible. Imagine that you have a computation of chain that involves trillions of instructions on a RISC-V microprocessor. Forget it, right? So this is a very interesting algorithm because in the end, you allow the blockchain to run a single instruction step to see whoever is cheating. So out of 1 trillion steps to run a single one. But there is a sort of binary search in which the blockchain is inquiring, let's say, Alice and Bob, to give their machine states in different places of the computation until the blockchain finds the exact point in which they agreed before and disagreed after the instruction.
Now, this need for a token to detect people who are manipulating results, is this a trade-off you have because you're a layer 2 solution?
So as I was saying, for the Cartesi Core, which is there, we don't need a token. If you are playing with someone else, you can represent yourself and fight against that person using the blockchain, and the dispute resolution will happen without the need for a token, right? Now, why the token is necessary is because, let's say, for instance, you're not connected to the internet at some times.
Okay.
Someone is trying to cheat, and you're not there to participate in the verification game, in the dispute resolution. So you might miss a deadline, and in the end, the cheating party could just place an incorrect result on the blockchain, and that would be just stated as true, and you just missed the boat because you're not there in time to respond. So the first asset of the token is that you can outsource this task of playing the dispute or the verification game on your behalf to some other nodes on the network. That's one idea.
Now, I'm sorry to cut you off, just because I always try to bring this to a use case that is, it kind of dumbs down everything, right? So is there like an insurance use case that we could use as an example of me missing a deadline? Like, I didn't, there was an earthquake and somebody puts in the Richter scale to take away my chance at a claim. What's an example where we can show how I wouldn't be around and I would need to offload the verification to somebody else?
That's actually a very interesting example, because we think about insurance applications and many other applications, because you could, for instance, do complex things like take a satellite image from NASA and see if there is a hurricane, at some region at some time, and just enact things on the smart contract by doing the heavy computation on Cartesi, right? So it's a very interesting example. So yeah, suppose you have some insurance application running on Cartesi, and the users of this application, they may not be online all the time to defend their interests, right? So if there is some malicious node proposing fake results to the smart contracts, then that player that's not there online, he would pay a small fee to the Cartesi network to have some other worker nodes representing him and defending his interests if it's necessary.
Very interesting. I mean, everything's an incentive game, right? So it's just figuring out, is there enough money then to incentivize those defender nodes to also lie with you? It's fascinating when you get into the game theory. So I'm sorry, I cut you off on your first example.
Sorry?
Well, you're going through a few examples. If there's no other, we were talking.
No, there are lots of examples we can talk about. Right now, I'm very excited because we're developing our first, let's say, nice DApp, which is going to be a game, right? We're developing a tower defense game, a very simple one.
Okay.
Right, but the idea around developing this game is to make the point that here's a game that's totally decentralized using blockchains, and yet it uses an amount of computation that would be unfeasible on chain. So we are doing this heavy computation on the Cartesi nodes without sacrificing centralization. So for instance, it is an interesting example because right now, in our first simple step, we're storing all the game events on chain, and we chose a tower defense game because this kind of game you just have to place a tower here, another tower there. You have a small number of interactions for you as a player, right? So your log of events is short enough could fit on chain. So we just send these events to the blockchain, but the actual computation of the waves of the game, when the enemies come and our towers are fighting against the enemies and everything, that involves lots of computation. So all of that computation is offloaded to Cartesi.
Okay, now to switch gears so I can kind of see where you see this vision going 5-10 years from now, and how it coexists with other chains. So if we're saying that Cartesi is a layer 2, that insinuates that there's going to be multiple layer 1s, right? It can't just, I would assume that Cartesi would as a vision wants more than just Bitcoin, right? Something that's Turing complete as a layer 1.
Yeah, we require the layer 1 to, to have a programmability in the sense that like we can deploy our smart contracts there. It needs to be Turing complete.
So, what are some examples of chains that would you see, existing 5 to 10 years from now? Are they, which of the ones already out there do you think coexist with Cartesi in the future?
I mean, we are ready to support Cartesi on top of all the chains that we feel are gonna have traction and be demanded by the community. We're gonna be hearing what the communities as which chains they prefer, and they're gonna be following the trend in that sense. We want to really provide Cartesi on top of the major blockchains.
Being chain agnostic at this point makes sense for your solution.
Yeah.
Now, off the top of my head, is like EOS, is that a potential partner in the future?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. And then I assume Ethereum or Ethereum Classic as well. Those can both be, I have a Polkadot. That's what I'm trying to get is, who do you see being there with you 5 years from now? Polkadot's is a good example.
Yeah, we always think about Ethereum Classic, Cardano, Polkadot. Those are the most. We've also been talking to, there are solutions like Nervous and other blockchains that's starting to play with RISC-V architectures as well. So that's quite interesting.
What's interesting is, I love doing this show because I get this kind of exposure. Nervos, I had never heard of Nervos until I had an episode a few days ago with Thomas from F2Pool. And he was talking about, they're launching the testnet now, and then soon the mainnet's going to be up for Nervos. So hearing you also mention it, it's nice to see these themes, right? Because there's just so many different choices. And you, the builders, what you guys are focused on is important for us, the audience, the investors, the users to also be focused on. Is there any interaction with some of the other, it has to be a Turing complete chain. There's no point in asking about like a Mimblewimble or something, right?
Well, it might be possible to implement Cartesi on top of Bitcoin, but that could be really, really like a hell, right? To use XO to implement our stuff there, but might not be impossible.
Yeah.
Let's start from the simplest now. But yeah, our idea, I really don't know which blockchains are going to be there after 5 years. But I think one of the nice things of our vision is to allow developers, as long as they're developing with Cartesi, they shouldn't worry so much about this, because you're going to be, porting in Cartesi to the major blockchains. So someone might have the option to easily port the application from one chain to the other using Cartesi as well, because most of their logic is going to be implemented for Linux using our protocols and so on. So they wouldn't have to, they don't have too much rework to go to another blockchain.
I think This could be interesting to share, especially with I have a very strong Ethereum Classic audience. Recently, there's been a lot of releases on new compiling tools. So I think this could be very interesting to that audience.
Yeah.
On the business side, where are you right now on, your vision towards tokenization? How is that going to be distributed?
So yeah, we are right now as a business, we just open source. We want people to start to experiment with Cartesi, provide feedback. Next, we're going to be deploying the tower defense game. So we have an eye on the game industry. We want to have game studios that want to do like purely decentralized games use Cartesi. So that's the short-term vision for our business, to create some traction first with game developers.
And that's
and then
on the game side, is that because you're going to have a lot of transactions and you want to stress test, or what's the, I mean, what you're building is a Swiss, I mean, it's a tool set for all development, right?
Yeah, correct.
What's the strategic decision to go towards gaming?
Yeah, we're not framing ourselves as a game platform. We're much more generic, as you said, but it's strategic to start from games because, we see lots of the apps that exist today. They are games, right?
Yeah.
And game developers, they're always ahead when there is a new technology. They're usually the first ones to use the new technology and do stuff. So
when we say gaming, it could also be like casino games, right?
Could also be casino games. But we want to have it's like a low hanging fruit for us. I think games.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And so it seems that the token ideas, the exchange listings and stuff like that are much further down the line.
No, not much further. We are going to have the Cartesi network at some point next year. That's the plan, with the tokens, and we are going to distribute the tokens possibly through an IO that's still being debated.
Decided the ticker? What have you decided what the 3-letter or 4-letter ticker is?
No, yeah. But the thing is that we are still working on some very fundamental ideas of our token model. So we may have 2 tokens, but probably a single token, which is going to be called CTSI.
Yeah, just so I can add it. I want people to be aware, to keep an eye out.
Sure.
Now, I think we've definitely covered the economic side. We've covered the tech stack, and I think you did a great job of laying out the partnerships you're going to have in the future. What is the challenge you have today as far as reaching some of your milestones? Is it awareness, getting more Dapp developers using the tool set? Is it funding? What is the number one issue that you're trying to solve today?
Yeah, the number one issue is raising awareness around the community and getting people on board to try, provide feedback, experiment with Cartesi. That's really our most important challenge right now in terms of business.
So what we'll do is we'll definitely put the link to, I guess, the GitHub. And there was a demo you mentioned.
We also have a Discord channel where we're discussing our technical things, and can also share with you.
Excellent. So we'll put the Discord as well. Okay. This has been fantastic. We covered a lot of ground. I think that you did a great job explaining what Cartesi is and where it fits in the tech stack. I'm definitely excited to share this with the rest of the community.
Nice.
Is there?
Let me just wrap up. I think the most important takeaway about what you're doing here is, when you look at the the wealth of software developments, mainstream software development that you see today on the internet, it was all built on top of operating systems, right? It's just like if you're a developer building some new software, you have lots of Lego pieces available to you to easily assemble complex and very interesting stuff. But when you go to blockchains, you don't have those Lego pieces available to you, right? So that's basically what we want to give. We want to give this, let's say, 30 years plus of software development and enhancements that you see on the software world, software based on operating systems, right? On blockchains, you can't even open a file. Not even the concept of a file exists. So that's basically the most important vision for Cartesi. And with that, we want to onboard like veteran developers, mainstream developers, and also be a bridge, to facilitate people that are not used to blockchains to start to develop for blockchains.
So
that's our.
How does this, today the Dapp experience, usually from a user standpoint, includes like something like MetaMask. How would this change the user experience? Would things be faster? Would there be a different, front end experience?
Yeah, I think there is room to experiment different scenarios here. For instance, with our tower defense game, we don't want people to be interacting with MetaMask. So what we're going to do is there will be a wallet that's controlled by your own Cartesi node, because you as a player you are running your own Cartesi node with your game there, and your Cartesi node has access to a wallet that you're just using for the purpose of the game. So just put some small funds there to pay for gas or whatever you need for the game, and the Cartesi node represents you and just signs the transactions on chain on your behalf, for instance.
Is there a hardware requirement? Like, what's the hardware requirement for a node on Cartesi?
Oh, there is no. I mean, you can't run the Cartesi node on a mobile now, right? But basically, right now you're using Docker, so it's depending on Docker. So you can run it on Windows or Mac or whatever desktop you want or laptop. But yeah, in the future, we're going to distribute Cartesi in different ways. And as I said, with the Cartesi network, you might not even need to have the Cartesi nodes installed on your own device, because you're delegating to some other work in the network to act on your behalf.
Interesting. So, I mean, part of the Cartesi vision is that down the line, most probably people won't own or run their own nodes. There's going to be, a few, distributed globally node operators, but you don't expect that, everybody interacting with a Cartesi Dapp is going to be running their own node.
Correct. And as I said, because of security issues and convenience issues, they would outsource their tasks to workers in the Cartesi network.
Awesome.
There are other kinds of attacks as well that we would prevent by providing the network.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to playing the tower game.
Awesome.
So the moment that's out, let me know. That way I can, not only play it, but share it with everybody else.
Yeah. And I'm also looking forward to seeing how we can also participate more in the Ethereum Classic community and see what we can do from there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interest there for sure. The ETC Labs core team is building a lot of fundamental tool sets. One of the things we discussed right now is MetaMask. They've two of the engineers have built a new specification called OpenRPC for standardizing RPC calls, JSON RPC. I assume that would be something that Cartesi could possibly use. since almost all blockchains are using RPC. So I'll definitely share that with you after. That'd be cool if as a result of us talking, there's some sort of a collaboration. And that community is very accessible. So I'll put you in touch, and we'll also share all of the community details for Cartesi. Erick, I can't wait for us to do this again. Once I also have more compiling knowledge, hopefully we can also have a roundtable and include some other people who are building in a similar part of the tech stack.
For sure, Dean, that would be great.
Awesome.
Looking forward.